The saying goes that a mind is a terrible thing to waste. I have a knack for music and some experience using simple video and music editing programs, so when I joined the fandom last December, I had hoped to follow in the footsteps of musicians like Wooden Toaster, who had already reached his magnum opus. But at the age of 15, I lacked funding for good equipment. I could wait, but what are the odds that the fandom would still be thriving after that amount of time? I jumped on the opportunity when I learned about the massive community of reviewers and analysts all over YouTube and lots of forum and blog sites. I tend to overthink things, often to a fault, so I thought that I could, after all, make a contribution to the MLP community, and in a way that is natural to me. Okay, so my method of presentation is going to be unique. Since the season has ended, I'll work in reverse chronological order, starting with Twilight's Kingdom, and given that I receive attention, make my way to Princess Twilight Sparkle, and possibly even Magical Mystery Cure and before. So without further introductions, since you're probably tapping your foot wondering what I'm going to stop going on about myself, let's get down to business. The first thing that stuck out to me was Twilight admitting that her role as a princess had no real purpose. I've heard many people say that this was typical of Twilight's character, to wallow in self-pity until inspired and ultimately overcoming some apocalyptic crisis. Though it does show methods of expression that she's had since the beginning of the series, it seems like this was actually essential for evolving Twilight as a character. Note that in the season premiere, she didn't want to be treated like someone different and wanted to maintain her role as a normal civilian. Then came Twilight Time, where she happily gave out autographs and was content with the attention that she was getting. You could also argue that her organizing the chaotic group of fools in the episode, as well as her being the figure of authority in Tragia, contributed too, but Twilight has shown these traits since as early as the resolution to the conflict of Winter wrap-up. Now, keep in mind Twilight's usual attitude and her increased acceptance of being a princess, and you have a surprisingly deep scene. The easiest way I can explain this is comparing it to Pokemon, more specifically evolution. I've selected Pikachu's evolutionary line, not just to be recognized by a larger audience, but because of minor similarities that I'll get to in a moment. It contains 3 stages: Pichu, Pikachu, and Raichu, each stronger than the last. In the season premiere, I'd say Twilight is most similar to Pichu, the first stage in evolution and also the weakest. In several sources, including gameplay from Super Smash Bros. Melee, Pichu is known to actually hurt itself because its power overflows and cannot use it correctly. Twilight, as a similarity, isn't comfortable with the power she has, and is still learning things about her new role, the most obvious being flight. Pichu evolves into Pikachu literally because of happiness. Pikachu is stronger and properly controls its power. I'd say this evolution of Twilight happened between Princess Twilight Sparkle and Twilight, and we see Twilight most similar to Pikachu in the latter. Twilight begins to relish in being a princess, showing happiness that caused her evolution, and she's actually controlling her flying. We do see Twilight flying correctly in the premiere, but she does end up lose control and is not used to it in any way. Twilight's Kingdom is all about that third evolution. Pikachu evolves into Raichu when it touches an item called a Thunderstone, and without one, it's stuck as a Pikachu whether it likes it or not. In the beginning of the episode, Twilight wants to take on responsibilities only a true princess can, but hasn't gotten the opportunity. Twilight wants to find that Thunderstone, so to speak, and evolve into Raichu, a fully realized princess, which she obtains in the end. Pichu, Pikachu, and Raichu all have differing power and are capable of different things, but through this, they maintain several things, mostly physical traits. They all remain themed around electric mice, they store electricity in their cheeks, and their tails are shaped like lightning bolts. People think that Twilight's complaints are typical to her character, which they totally are, but it's supposed to be like that. You see Twilight changing over the course of Season 4, but that line serves as an anchor to even before she became a princess. The typical attitude is like the visual characteristics in a Pokemon's evolution. There's a lot of change in certain aspects, but she still in many ways remains the same. So, after a brief appearance by the infamous Flash Sentry, and the super important job of Twilight unfurling the banner, we skip to Twilight's confrontation with Celestia, Luna, and Cadance. This song right here is just pointless. Songs are often used in the show as an alternative to a stagnant conversation, but the song was used even though said conversation had already taken place. Twice. The princesses used all of their time singing to essentially tell Twilight that they had no idea what her purpose was either. I could have looked past this had the song been as tremendous as The Greats We've Seen, Winter Wrap-Up, and the Smile song coming to mind. The song was uneventful, not in any real way memorable, and is actually one of the few moments in the show that actually bored me. Moving on a bit of a positive note, the use of Discord in this episode was perfect. Where the song lacked, Discord made up for. He is and always has been a very active character. He's restless, sporadic, and just all-around fun to watch. He's the ideal messenger to remind Twilight of the chest, and to give them the journal at the same time. While he talked and the viewers gained all the necessary information, he kept us entertained throughout all of it. Discord also uses his restless nature to make the dialogue entertaining in his encounter with Tyrek, which really wowed me.
I am surprised that someone with your intellect does not see this friendship is but a new form of imprisonment. Clearly, you've had to abandon your true nature to stay in their good graces.
This alone sold Tyrek as my favorite villain. He brings up a fantastic point, but although Discord denies his claims, they are more than true. In a way, Tyrek is actually being the good guy. Take a look at this little clip from an episode earlier in the season. Simple Ways.
Real friends will like you for who you are. And changing yourself to impress them is no way to make new ones.
The moral of Simple Ways, in the context of Keep Calm and Flutter On, which, if you didn't know, is the episode Discord gets reformed, puts a new perspective on Discord's reformation. People can argue all day about whether or not Discord was actually reformed, but nobody questioned if reformation was actually the right thing to do. Rarity talks about how doing exactly what the main six did to Discord was bad, and Tyrek was exactly right. He, in a way, carried out one of the messages that the show tried to portray. Like I said before, Tyrek is my favorite villain, assuming Discord is reformed, but only while he was in his decrepit state. He really made a turn for the worse. To begin, he was dark and mysterious, to a cliche level, but that's okay. While he was weaker, he relied on his wit and silver tongue as shown in the scene with Discord, but once he became powerful, he gave his brain in exchange for brawn. You could say that the exchange offer in the end was a seemingly smart move, but similar situations have happened so many times across so many genres and works, you can't really call it clever. Had Tyrek been given a bigger role, other than a montage of abductions and a conversation with Discord before the battle, and continued to use his brain throughout, he would have been near perfect. As I said in the introduction, the saying goes that a mind is a terrible thing to waste, and Tyrek really did a good job of wasting it. I can't even touch this episode without touching the fight scene between hacked Twilight and Tyrek. First of all, let me say that this was epic at first glance, but the more I thought of it, the more I realized how much I really wasn't too fond of it. Like Discord, the fight served as a more dynamic and entertaining way to move the plot along, this time showing that Twilight and Tyrek had reached a stalemate, blowing up the library and setting up the exchange. But it didn't belong in the show. The massive fan base that FiM has acquired wasn't from stuff like this. The fight scene, reenacted exactly but by different characters in a different work, would display a demographic for males, kids, and teens alike. FiM has challenged gender stereotypes time and time again, but this was a step in the wrong direction. Instead of manipulating the female demographic to appeal to males, they just added some violence and called it good for guys to watch. You know, I really hope that this doesn't start a trend in the writing in the show. I mean, if you want to see your waifu get pummeled by demons, go read a fanfic. My biggest gripe about this episode has to do with how Twilight's element of harmony is represented. In Friendship is Magic, Lauren Faust stated that there are two different kinds of magic, active and passive. Active magic is what unicorns and alicorns do, levitation, teleportation, etc. And passive magic is the Pegasi being able to walk in clouds and make weather, etc., and whatever it is that Earth ponies do, I don't really care. I'm going to refer to active magic as active magic for the sake of clarifying things. The magic referred to in the term element of magic is the magic of friendship. You're probably all rolling your eyes. Duh, Caps, they only say friendship is magic every 20 seconds. But the reason I bring this up is because of how confusing it is in this particular episode. When the princesses agree to give their magic to Twilight, Cadence says, and I quote, "Twilight, you represent the element of magic. If there is any pony who can do this, it's you." The elements all show a personality trait, and in most occasions it's obvious that the element of magic is just a metaphor for friendship, hyperbolized to further advertise the moral. But in this instance, it said that being the element of magic is what made her capable of containing the magic. But being a good friend doesn't mean you can harness all the magic of the most powerful good beings in Equestria, and the notion that the element of magic has to do with her actual active magic skills blurs her purpose as a wielder of an element of harmony. This gets even more blurred when Twilight gets her key. The main six all had to face a challenge when facing their element of harmony would be viewed negatively, but persevering would in the end bring a positive outcome, teaching someone else about their element. The particular turning point was when Twilight gave up her active magic for her friends, which made Discord realize how important friendship really was. But it wasn't the active magic that caught Discord's attention. It was that friendship is worth more than power, and it would have had a great setup had the power been given, not been active magic. We tend to see literal meanings having more weight than metaphors, and Twilight giving up her active magic was indeed difficult, but it was only an object. It could have been set up differently so that Twilight would give something else to Tyrek, and Discord would have still realized how important friendship was. By having a literal and a metaphorical interpretation of magic at the same time so closely correlated, I think it took away from the scene. And then there's this ugly piece of garbage castle. Like someone copied and pasted the settings of the season 3 and 4 premieres, Crystal Empire and the Tree of Harmony, and combined them into one. Well, I suppose Twilight needed a new place to live, well, since... which was unneeded and just made the fandom cry. Anyway, the castle has so much wrong with it. First, it's ugly. Second, I hold a grudge over the library. And third, and the actual important one, it really changes what Ponyville is about. Ponyville was always a small, humble town. In Sweet and Elite, it was considered bad to live in Ponyville as opposed to Canterlot due to its insignificance and lack of high society. Plus, in simple ways, the small town of small town chic didn't come out of thin air. But with the merry suing of winning the medal count in the Equestria Games, plus the addition of a giant freaking castle, Ponyville is beginning to be less of a real setting and more of just a location. This being my first video, the main thing I'm looking for is feedback. Please share what you thought, both good and bad, so I can continue to make my videos more entertaining and more informative. Leave a comment, and I'll keep it in mind when I make future videos. So until then, so long.